Hello, everybody. This is Jennifer Schaus coming to you live from Washington, D.C., a snowy, wintry Washington, D.C. Wednesday, and thanks for joining us in our Webinar Wednesday series. We host webinars every Wednesday throughout the year at 12 o'clock and 12:30. They're all complimentary and they are recorded. We will post the recordings on our website and also our YouTube channel. And in the interest of time, we do not take questions. So if you have questions today for our speaker, you can contact him at the conclusion of the webinars, and his information will be provided on the very last slide. It'll include phone number and email. A little bit about us. We do provide professional services for federal contractors, both product and service companies, as well as software firms, domestic and foreign companies. Our services are listed here, ranging from GSA schedule down to contract administration, business development, and more. You can find more information about our services on our website. Our newsletter reaches about 15,000 subscribers, and we do offer advertising there as well as in our webinar series, and Mallory Flowers can help you with that. Her contact information is here on the screen. And now just a quick message from our webinar advertiser, AccuTrack. And we'll see if this audio works for me today. Maybe not. Okay, so a little bit about AccuTrack. They are an accounting services firm. They are also a 8A women-owned small business, and they help federal contractors with DCAA audits, budget forecasting, cost allocation, bookkeeping, and reporting. Their website is www.accutrack with just a K, not a CK, .biz. And you can find more information about their services on their website. So without further ado, just a quick background here on Dr. Jamie Sokolow, his education, his company name there, and he's got obviously ample years of experience in federal government contracting. And so today Jamie's going to be talking to us about how to develop winning grant proposals. And then at 12:30, he'll follow up with organizing for the grant proposal. So Jamie, without further delay here, I'm going to pass the floor over to you and let you dig into your topic.
Oh, thank you very much, Jennifer. It's a pleasure and an honor to speak to everyone today from snowy Washington, D.C. This morning, I'm going to be talking about developing winning grant proposals for businesses rather than for nonprofits. So let's go to the first slide. I'd first like to spend a few minutes talking about federal grants. A federal grant is a monetary award. It's a contract given by a federal agency to a nonprofit organization, a business, or even another government entity. Every year, the federal government gives out about $1 trillion in grants. But before you start salivating, about $700 billion of that is earmarked or focused on state and local governments in education, health, and other fields. So that leaves about $300 billion. But much of that money goes to nonprofit organizations. Next slide, please. There are many organizations that are eligible for federal grants. Government agencies on the state and local level can apply. Educational organizations, school systems, public housing organizations, nonprofit organizations, and businesses or for-profit organizations. Most of the discretionary grant money in the federal government goes to government organizations, educational organizations, and nonprofit organizations. However, there are grants that businesses are eligible for. There are many grants at the National Institutes of Health. There are many grants available through the Department of Defense for research. And there is an SBIR, STTR program in a number of federal agencies that provides grants in Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 competitions for businesses to develop products and commercialize them. So even though it is the case that not a lot of money in the federal government is available for business grants, there are some key federal agencies and key federal programs that do provide grants to businesses. And that's what we're going to look at today. Next slide, please. Typically, grants go into a very predictable pattern or life cycle that you need to know about. In the pre-award phase, an agency will announce a funding opportunity. And then at the deadline, they will receive applications. And then probably for the next 3 or 4 months, they will review those applications. After their review is completed, they go into an award phase. They announce their award decisions, clear up any difficulties in making the awards, and provide official notifications to businesses. And then in the post-award phase, which is the third phase, you implement your grant, you have to report on it, and then you have to end it and officially close it out with the government agency. So that is a typical grant life cycle, and it applies virtually to all grants in the federal government. Next slide, please. I think if you want to develop a winning grant proposal to a federal agency, you need to develop a very good process to do it, because the quality of your process will help determine the quality of your grant. You can't rush the development of a grant, and you can't sit down and just write a grant. You have to develop it step by step. And so what I'd like to do in the remaining time is take you through the steps that I have learned are best for my business clients. Also, there's a great deal of literature available about how to develop good proposals and grants, and I encourage you to look at that too. So let's start by looking at the step-by-step process. Step one is to determine what you want to do. Whenever I speak to a client and they tell me they want a government grant, the first question I ask is, what do you want to do? You have to very specifically determine what it is you would like to accomplish with federal financial support. Once you do that, you're ready to go to step two. You have to determine if there is federal funding available to support what you would like to do. And I would suggest you do that by looking at the agency websites and the SBIR, STTR website to see what it is that the federal government supports for businesses in the way of grants. Once you have determined if there is federal funding, the next step, step three, is to identify the federal agencies or programs that support what you have wanted to do in step one. So the first part of your work involves research. Next slide, please. Once you have determined that there is a federal agency that can provide you with grant support, you have to develop a strategic plan to create a winning grant proposal. And that involves a number of things in my point of view. First of all, you have to know what the deadline is and what the specific program is. You have to know it really well, because this takes a lot of study, takes a lot of patience, and as you will see, it takes a lot of shoe work. You need to identify key federal people you should contact. If you're near Washington, D.C., you should come and visit those people in person and learn more about the program. If you can't visit a federal agency, you can always call and talk to people or have a Skype or a Zoom conference. But I strongly recommend that you contact people directly. Then you should follow up with a brief white paper explaining what you want to do and how it fits the funding mission of the federal agency. Many federal agencies encourage white papers, and they will respond to your white paper with a critique that will give you advice about whether or not to proceed and how to proceed. So based on that critique, you should determine whether your idea for a grant proposal is likely to be funded. Next slide, please. In the fifth step, once you've determined that there is a market for your idea or program, you need to develop your grant proposal. That does not involve sitting down and writing. It involves a lot of planning. The first thing you need to do is to create a calendar of your milestones and deliverables and key dates that takes you from the kickoff meeting all the way to the submission of the proposal. You also should register in Grants.Gov. Many federal agencies use Grants.Gov for the submission electronically of their applications. Some federal agencies have their own portals to submit grants. Whether it's Grants.Gov or a specific portal, you need to register early and go onto the portal, take their tutorials, use their videos, and learn how to use the site correctly and effectively. Once you've done that, you're ready to put together a detailed outline of the entire application, and that includes the proposal narrative and all the appendices. At the same time, you need to identify your proposal team, the people who are going to help you put together the application, and what their responsibilities are going to be. Once you've done that, you're ready to hold a kickoff meeting so that everyone understands collectively what you are doing together, gets on the same train in the same car, and is headed toward the same destination. So a kickoff meeting is really important because it helps people understand the teamwork and the effort that's going to be needed to submit a winning proposal. So once you have your kickoff meeting, you're ready to get started, and I hope that you have a proposal manager who will guide this effort and help everyone adhere to the calendar. Next slide, please. Your goal is to produce a complete first draft of the proposal. And this should include the narrative, your pictures, and your graphics, and anything else that is required in the narrative. And I would strongly recommend that you do that at least 2 weeks before the deadline. Next slide, please. Then you should do a red team review. In the corporate world, when responding to RFPs, requests for proposals, it's common to do a number of color reviews. But in grant proposals, you usually don't have the time and the resources, so you should do a red team review. A red team review is a review of a complete first draft by people who have not been involved in developing the proposal, but who know the program and the content. They should be given the guidelines way in advance so they understand what they're reading, and then they should be given an electronic version of the narrative, and they should do a track changes and comments version in detail. I have found that this is the fastest and the best way to improve a proposal and make it more competitive. Once you've gotten these comments, you can revise accordingly. Next, please. Don't neglect all the forms and appendices and resumes and bio sketches that are likely to accompany your proposal. In my experience, these often take a lot of time. They're very obnoxious, and if you don't do them in the beginning, you will waste valuable time toward the end that should be devoted to revising your red team version. So please, in your calendars, make sure that you are also working on your forms and appendices and bio sketches and logic models and anything else that's required at the same time that you are working on your proposal narrative. Don't leave it to the last minute. If you do, in my experience, you will come to grief. Next slide, please. Then, once you've done a revised red team version, you should do a gold and white glove review. In other words, you should make sure that the proposal is complete and compliant and convincing, that there are no typos, that the punctuation is correct, that everything is there, and that it looks really great. And that you're able to upload it into Grants.Gov or the portal that you may be using. So the white glove review is your final review before you submit it. And it's to not change the content, but to make sure that everything is clean and correct. Same thing for the gold review. It's your last opportunity to really make any changes. So once you've done that, you are ready to submit. And this is not something that should be left to the last minute, because you may encounter challenges in electronically submitting your proposal. So that if it's due at 5 o'clock, you don't want to be uploading it at 4 o'clock. You want to be uploading it at 10 a.m. And that way, if you encounter any problems, you can get assistance and you can ensure that you will meet the deadline. Now, once you submit your proposal, you're not finished. You should immediately create an electronic record of the proposal. And that might involve putting everything on a CD or putting everything into a SharePoint folder that resides on your company website. But whatever you do, you need to document everything that you've done for a couple of reasons that will become apparent in a moment. Next slide, please. Now, once you have submitted, all you can do is wait. You cannot contact the federal agency and ask about your proposal or try to intervene. Grant proposals are rigorously evaluated by independent panels, and then they are reviewed internally by the agencies. So I hope you win. But if you don't, you can still do a couple of things to help you. If you win, I recommend that you ask for a copy of the reviewer's comments. And if you lose, I also recommend that you ask for a copy of the reviewer's comments. The reviewer's comments will give you a very detailed picture of how the reviewers analyzed your proposal. And the comments are often keyed to the key evaluation criteria. And so this will give you a lot of good advice, win or lose, about how you put together your proposal. And for me, this is very important, and that's why I've included it on step 15. You need to learn from the grants application process. Treat it as a form of pedagogy. And as you do proposals, become better at submitting grants. Because very often in the beginning, it's hard to get a grant. And you need to submit several times to the same agency in order to learn how to do it competitively. So use the government processes that are available to get reviewers' comments, win or lose, to figure out how you did and how you can do better. Next slide, please.
Jamie, thanks so much for presenting today. I'll let you conclude with your final thoughts here.
Well, my final thoughts are pretty straightforward. As you can see, I'm a strong believer in process. I think the better processes you set up, the better your grant proposal is likely to be. I also think that you need to allocate the time and resources and staff available to do a good job. Doing a grant is a very labor-intensive, time-consuming process. There's no quick and easy way to do it. And what I've tried to do is provide you with the steps that I think will enable you to do it successfully. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. And just in a couple minutes at 12:30 Eastern, Jamie will be presenting a second webinar on organizing to win for grants. So if you have any questions, Jamie's contact information is here, his email and his phone number. To get the full list of our upcoming webinars and ones that have been recorded in the past, you can go to our website and click on the webinar section. And thanks again, everybody, for joining us. This recording should be up on our website and on our YouTube channel by the end of the week. Thanks, everyone.